Welcome back, you pugnacious pummelers. I'm Lupinefiasco, this is Daily FaB Gameplay, and today we are playing Jarl Vetreidi. For anyone who's new to the channel, what we do here is review replays of games I played on the Talishar.net client days or weeks ago. After enough time has passed, that I lose my bias and can more objectively judge the quality of my games. I will talk through turn cycles as if I were taking them now, explaining my thought processes for the lines I would take and comparing them to the lines I did take. We either learn from my mistakes or reinforce good play patterns with the overall goal of tightening and optimizing our gameplay in the future to take down paper events and walk away with that shiny cardboard. If you would like to check out the deck I'm playing here or try it for yourself on Talishar, there is a FaB deck link in the video description below. While you're down there, if you haven't already done so, please consider a YouTube subscription. It's the best free way to support me and to make sure that you see daily FaB gameplay in your video feed 5 days a week. I have a Blue Sky, I have a Discord, and I have a Patreon where you can find the matchup guide for this deck list. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into the action. As a quick reminder, this is Vero's Tempo CYB list. This is not my Jarl list. I am just trying this over the next week and a half to see if I like Decompose and Count Your Blessings. Against Azalea, we won the die roll and chose to go second, the idea being that we can block a little bit more on turn 1 and then hopefully be disruptive on turn 2. And we do have a hand that blocks and disrupts pretty well. We have 2/3 blocks, a Winter's Bite for when we come back to our turn. Now, the Knock the Death Whistle is going to make sure that we cannot adequately use our entire hand. What is probably going to happen is that Azalea is going to load Red in the Ledger into her arsenal. She will play a buff, being this Lace with Blood Rot, and then fire the Red in the Ledger for 8 with Dominate. We can block this with Channel Mount Ison, take 5, our turn. We are hoping to draw a blue, and what we would like to do with that blue is bottom it to E-Strike. We'll send E-Strike for 7. We can use our Sow tomorrow to pay the Blood Rot tax, and then Arsenal Winter's Bite for our next turn, where we can try to be disruptive, assuming that we have more than one action point. We could have covered the Lace with the Red in the Ledger with armor if we wanted to do multiple things on our next turn, but without knowing that we're going to have a Icequake or multiple Winter's Bites or whatever, then the giving a bunch of armor on turn 0 looks really bad. Felling of the Crown here is not good in our arsenal and is not something that we can play early, so this is a perfect card to bottom to Enlighten Strike. In fact, helps us very well because now we will see that felling later in the game when we do have the ability to decompose and when it does attack for 8. Meanwhile, we're just going to send E-Strike for 7, intending to pitch Sow tomorrow to the Blood Rot Pox and then arsenaling Winter's Bite, hopefully to play next turn before Azalea has her Tunic available to pay for the Winter's Bite tax. Azalea showing us a defense reaction is notable because it means that we can assume she has 2 more of them in her deck. It also means that we can expect Channel Lake Frigid to get some defensive value, I should say offensive value, if it prevents Azalea from playing a defense reaction on our turn. Now we have a Ravenous Rabble attacking for 4 with Go again. We see a Battering Bolt on top of Azalea's deck. We could block with our Stalagmite. If we wanted to give Azalea a Frostbite, that would take a card from her in order to activate her hero power, and depending on what color of card it is, it might then get the second card out of her hand to pay for the Battering Bolt, or it could be that she has 2 reds and can't afford to Azalea Battering Bolt, and just fires this Bolton Shot instead. So Stalagmite could be helpful here. Now, based on what we have in hand, what we are looking to do, if we get attacked with that Battering Bolt for 6 with Dominate, is play Pulse of Isenloft, pitch So Tomorrow to pay for it, and then on our turn play Winter's Bite and then play Frostfang. We could stagger them, but knowing that Azalea is coming up on being able to use her Spring Tunic, I do want to get that Winter's Bite value now. We could Arsenal the Frostfang if we wanted to just hammer for 4, but I really don't like hammering for 4 when I have Frostfang in hand. So I think that we could use Stalagmite here, and I wouldn't hate it. I'm not expecting to get much Stalagmite value against Azalea, with the only card that she can really give go again to being Bolton Shot, unless she wants to use her Snapdragon Scalers. So I think that using the Stalagmite here would be fine. Azalea brought 65 cards to this matchup. I'm assuming that she is on at least blue Bolton Shot and blue Spire Sniping, as well as Knock the Death Whistle. So she very easily could have blues in hand that say, pitch a blue to Azalea, use the 2 floating resources to Battering Bolt. But if Azalea does not have blues in hand, then the Stalagmite just gets her hand if she wants to play that Battering Bolt, or maybe she can't even play the Battering Bolt. And yeah, so we see a Codex of Frailty. It would have taken another card from Azalea to fire off his Battering Bolt, and then she does get an Arsenal on her turn, and the Frostfang is even more impactful if it puts her to 3 cards. So I do want to play Pulse of Isenloft here, and I do want to pitch So Tomorrow to pay for it. Now, I misspoke a bit earlier. We are going to play the Winter's Bite, and depending on what Azalea pitches to it, we would either Frostfang or Titan's Fist. If I play Winter's Bite and Azalea pitches a blue, such that she has 2 resources floating, then I would not attack with Frostfang, because the Frostfang does not get anything extra from Azalea. So pitching this Terra Sunder puts the Terra Sunder closer to the top of my deck, which is where I want it. But if Azalea pitches a blue to the Winter's Bite and floats 2 resources, then I have misplayed, because So Tomorrow says that Titan's Fist attacks for 3. Thankfully, Azalea does pitch a yellow, so she doesn't have the resource available to pay for the Frostfang. She does give us multiple cards to block it. The hand that we draw into says that we could take a bunch of damage in order to Boulder Drop Pummel, which is not necessarily bad. We'll just see. We're looking at 6 here. We can block this with Armor and a card from hand, right? We could block with our Boulder Drop, our Gauntlets, and our Civic Steps. Then on our turn, we use our Tunic to pay for Icequake, and then pitch Terra Sunder to attack with Titan's Fist. That's 7 with Frostbite, and we Arsenal a Pummel. Alternatively, we could take 8, go to 23, and then on our turn, we pitch our Terra Sunder to play Boulder Drop for 6, then use Tunic and Icequake to pummel it, putting it up to 10. Azalea discards a card and has to put a card from her hand onto the top of her deck, which is kind of maybe okay, considering that she'll just draw it back with Death Dealer. The fact that she knows what's on top of her deck could be problematic. She could load an arrow with Bullseye Bracer, and then Azalea at the top of her deck, maybe it's something like Red in the Ledger, Remorseless, something that she would want to dominate and that we don't want her to dominate. So I don't hate blocking the Infecting Shot with Boulder Drop, Gauntlet, and Civic Steps. I think that is what I want to do. If we take 8 here, we're putting ourselves at 23. That's a 14-point deficit between Azalea's health and ours. And that is what I choose to do. So let's see if I'm going to pummel the Boulder Drop. I could also Tunic Icequake Boulder Drop for 9. It does appear that that is what I'm going to do. So Boulder Drop here, threatening 9. If Azalea does not give us 3 cards or a card and a defense reaction, then she has to bottom a card from her hand, or she has to put a card from her hand on the top of her deck. So I'm expecting that this may just be Azalea blocks for 6, keeps 2 cards. The problem with this, and this is sort of the problem I have with Boulder Drop on the whole, and maybe where I should have been looking to pummel it, this is just based on inexperience with Boulder Drop, is Crush is just such a terrible mechanic these days. Azalea can just cover this with 2/3 blocks and take 3 damage. The Crush effect is not active. Azalea gets to load her Death Dealer with Tunic and then draw a card. And that is the benefit of Death Dealer with Fiandal Spring Tunic. But I think this is where we really needed to look at pummeling the Boulder Drop, just because this gives Azalea too much control over her turn, and forcing her to discard something would have been pretty good for us, right? Azalea just blocks with the Knock of the Death Whistle for value, and if we can force her to top a card as well, discard and top, it puts her down to 1 card in the hand. She can't do anything on her turn, which would look pretty good. Unfortunately, we draw into a Rootbound Carapace at exactly the wrong time. We have a Pummel in the arsenal, and as much as I want to pummel CNC, I also understand that Azalea does not currently have an arsenal, so the Command and Conquer doesn't do anything. We could use Crown to sink our pummel and draw a new card, but I don't see what we could draw that I'm really all that excited about. We could block with our CNC and Channeling Frigid. On our turn, just send Hammer for 4, and either keep this Rootbound Carapace or overpitch to Hammer. We could not play Channeling Frigid. Well, we could. We would pitch CNC, Rootbound Carapace, Imposing Visage, Channel Lake for 5, find another Channel Lake. The problem is we still don't have an ice card. We would pitch CNC, Rootbound, Channel Lake, play Imposing Visage, find Channel Lake Frigid, bottom our CLF in pitch, and get to keep the Channel Lake around, but we're taking 6 to do that and losing our arsenal because we can't block. We can block with Crown, sink the card, sink the pummel, hope that we draw an Ice Blue, so that we can play our Channel Lake Frigid, and then CNC, pitching Imposing Visage, arsenal the Rootbound Carapace. That might be our best line, just because our second best line is block with CNC, Channel Lake, and then pitch 2 cards to Hammer for 4, which just isn't very good. So I think crowning here is kind of the best bad line we have available. It sucks. It's really bad. We wish that we could block with this Rootbound Carapace, but I do think that crowning the pummel away just to try to find hopefully an Ice Blue, even an Ice Red wouldn't be terrible, but just try to find something we can do with this hand. We could also block with Imposing Visage to mitigate life loss, take 1 point of damage, try to turn pummel into an Ice Blue so that we can play Channel Lake Frigid, and then pitch Rootbound to play Command and Conquer. The CNC not letting us play Rootbound is putting us into a really, really tough spot. Unfortunately, we can't just block with both of our blues, because then we can't do anything on our turn. We have no way to pay for CNC, and we can't pitch 2 reds to attack with Titan's Fist. We don't have our Tunic up to act as that 3rd resource. So choosing here to block for 6, I'm assuming the follow-up is going to be pitch these 2 cards, Titan's Fist for 4. Yep, because we don't want to hold the Rootbound Carapace. We want to try to draw into more action. We want to draw blues that we can use to pay for our attacks, especially if we can find something to pummel. That would be pretty nice. So Azalea getting to play some buffs, checking our discard. We only have 1 Earth card in discard. We can discard fruits in order to gain 2 life. But overall, we're looking at a Hamstring Shot for 14 with a Quicken, with a Ponder trigger on hit. The Hamstring Shot would affect our ability to, say, keep one of these Fruits of the Forest and then just Titan's Fist for 4. The Hamstring Shot is going to add an additional resource cost to that Titan's Fist. We don't have our Tunic up to pay for it. we could block with Fruits and Icequake, take 10, go to 13, and then pitch our Fruits of the Forest to play Plow Under. We would have the ability to decompose, but without any cards in our banish, the Plow Under only attacks for 2, and I really don't love the idea of going to 13 so that I can 2-card 2. What I think I actually want to do with this hand, unfortunately, is just block for 9, take 5, go to 18, and then keep a pummel, knowing that my Spring Tunic is going to be up on my next turn, that I can actually attack. Overall, this just sucks. This is a really bad situation for us to be in, considering that we have 3 2 blocks on a turn when we are strongly considering blocking out. Whether we block or discard the Fruits of the Forest doesn't matter. There is no benefit to doing one or the other. Our life loss remains the same, and the cards go to the same place. But I do think that blocking out just is our best line. It sucks. If we had Earth cards in Banish for Plow Under, then I would more likely take 5 to send 6 and disrupt Azalea's arsenal, but given the situation, that just is not the correct thing to do, and is part of why I don't like Decompose in Jarl. The hand that we draw into also sucks. Now we do get to CNC Pummel off of a single blue. If we don't have to block that much, then we can even play the Pummel from hand and keep a Pummel in arsenal. But I am thinking that I'm going to have to block with one of these 2 Pummels. It's just unfortunate that we're finding so many of our 2 blocks so close together. We've got a Bolt and Shot for 5 coming in with a Ponder on hit. This is an unfortunate breakpoint considering that of the 4 cards in our hand, our 2 blocks are the only ones we can really afford to block with. I do think that I want to use my Stalagmite here, if only to get Azalea's Tunic counter. She's been very patient with this Tunic, very disciplined with it, which is too bad for me, because I really want her to have not had that available at any point leading up to this situation. But we are going to block with the Stalagmite. I think this is fine. We get a card out of Azalea. We're really hoping to not have to block here. And we'll see what this Bolt and Shot comes in for, representing 6. We could cover this with Stalagmite, Gauntlets, Civic Steps, and Pummel. But I guess I should just take the 6, because what is Azalea? There are a few reasons that I want to block this 6. The first being that Azalea doesn't really have any 0-cost arrows that I'm not okay with her shooting at me right now. I believe the only one of consequence is like Searing Shot that Azaleas don't play anymore. If it's another Bolt and Shot, then that's fine. I'll take 2 or 3 points of damage. It wouldn't have been a red one, or else Azalea would have loaded that instead. The other thing is I really want Azalea to have an arsenal so that I can CNC it. And if I block this Bolt and Shot, then yeah, she arsenals this card in hand. The worst case for me would be that it is a Codex. But even then, she has a Ponder, so she gets a card in arsenal. I could block this Bolt and Shot. I think the reason I would not want to, besides giving up so many resources, 2 pieces of armor, a Pummel from hand, is just that I don't believe that Azalea really has anything to do with this last card in hand. I don't think that there's any kind of reload into 0-cost arrow that I'm concerned about, so I'm a little disappointed that I didn't just take 6 there. I would also get to have kept a Pummel so that I could potentially CNC Pummel again on my next turn after I've forced Azalea down to at least 3 cards in the hand. But all that aside, choose to commit a serious amount of armor. We are now 9 points down on life, throwing the Command and Conquer, representing a Pummel behind it. It's pretty unlikely that Azalea doesn't give us a card and arsenal. if she really had just a garbage hand, I guess she could put her entire hand in front of the CNC so that we would not get any pummel value. Now, the downside to that being that we still have our pummel. We aren't taking an intellect penalty for that to negatively impact us. We are going to pummel here. I'll put Azalea down to 1 card, and unless it's a codex, her turn should just be Arsenal pass. Even up the life totals a little bit. Now, I have to preface this turn with the understanding that I am bad at playing Flesh and Blood, because the most obvious play in the world here is just Oakenold, Pitch Blizzard, Pitch Flourish, Fuse Blizzard and Plow Under, Arsenal Plow Under. I don't remember in this moment that Plow Under is an Earth card, because in my head I'm thinking, well, if Plow Under was a blue, I could pitch that. Oakenold Fuse with Flourish and Blizzard. Plow Under is an Earth card. You can just fuse with that. So instead, we're going to 2-card 2 by pitching our Blizzard, and then we're going to Arsenal and Oakenold. Just the most boneheaded play. It should just be Oakenold dominate, get 2 cards from Azalea, do the Plow Under next turn. Just so bad. But, you know, we get Azalea's Arsenal. We turn on our next Decompose card, and maybe we'll get to fuse this Oakenold on a later turn. Just really, really, really bad play from me. If we do get to keep this Flourish and Crucible crumble, then we do get to Oakenold to dominate. Got a Ravenous Rabble coming in for 4 with Go Again. This will also give a Ponder on hit. I don't hate blocking with Civic Steps here, just with the understanding that Azalea probably can't use the Quicken. If she ends up playing a buff from hand, then the Remorseless does nothing with its action point. If Azalea has another arrow, the Remorseless does nothing with its action point. So we've got Remorseless coming in for 11. The Go Again doesn't matter. We can just block this with Boulder Drop and Icequake on our turn. We pitch Flourish, play Oakenold, double fuse, crumble, and then discard the crumble to the Seek and Destroy effect, which is actually not that bad for us. Crumble is not a card that I ever want to Arsenal, especially not in a matchup like this, where it represents an incredible loss in tempo. So losing it to the Seek and Destroy really isn't that bad. The worst part about this situation is just knowing that Azalea would not have been able to put a 15 damage turn together last turn if we had thrown the fused Oakenold when we should have. But in any case, Azalea takes 9, bottoms 2 cards at random. We lose a crumble, draw a crumble, which is not terrible. We can pitch that crumble to play Channel Lake Frigid. We could throw a hammer. The hammer would only be for 3. We're going to see what Azalea can do with all of these pumps. We've got a Hamstring Shot coming in for 8. With the Seek and Destroy on hit that we kind of don't care about. I don't mind blocking for 9 here. I think there is something to be said for blocking 6, taking 2, and playing a Channel Lake Frigid, so that we try to take some tempo back from Azalea. Ravenous Rabble here, giving us the opportunity to Blizzard, which I like, so that we can then... I would have liked to have done it before she knew what the card on top of the deck was, just so that Azalea has less information when it comes to how she wants to pilot this turn. We'll see what Azalea can pitch to the Blizzard effect. If it's 2 reds, then we probably... we could... I like blocking this with E-Strike. And then on my turn, I just pitch Winter's Bite, play Channel Lake Frigid, use my Tunic, Plow Under. I don't know that I realized that I had the Tunic available when I decided not to block with the E-Strike. As it is, we get to Arsenal and E-Strike, which is not bad, but I would rather not have the E-Strike in Arsenal and have 3 more life to play with That is just the nature of Azalea. You want to preserve life as much as you can so that you don't get randomly killed by a dominated arrow. This Plowhunter, of course, is going to come in for 6. It still does not represent even half of Azalea's remaining life total. What is more impactful is the Channel Lake Frigid. Taxing Azalea, she is a low blue count deck. We have the E-Strike here that we can potentially use to threaten lethal. If we draw into a pretty nice hand, maybe a blue and a 2-cost 6, in this case a 2-cost 8, what I would like to do here, is throw Fused Oakenold. But if I can't do that, what I would like to do is block with the Oakenold, send E-Strike, bottom Frostfang, and then pitch Winter's Bite to Felling of the Crown. What I can also try to do, if I need to, is block with Oakenold Frostfang and then just Felling for 8. We do definitely have enough cards in our discard to decompose, so Felling being a 2-card 8 that takes at least 1 card from Azalea guaranteed is really helpful. Depending on what Azalea draws into, she may wind up with a Sink Below that she would have to pay for. We've got an E-Strike coming in. Azalea is going to need to pitch to play this E-Strike, so it could very well just be 7. Azalea is showing us a Rain Razor in hand, which will be used to pay for the Bolton Shot. I believe that is a yellow, it's a blue Bolton Shot. So we're looking at a total of 7 damage coming in. We could block the E-Strike with Oakenold, take 2, go to 4, and then go to 1 after the Bolton Shot, and that lets us send 13 damage. The problem with sending 13 is that Azalea can cover it with a 3-block Skullbone Crosswrap and Tunic, going down to 1 and keeping 2 cards, which would let her load an arrow, pitch to Death Dealer, load an arrow, draw a card, play a card, attack with the arrow. And if she's threatening 8 damage and we're at 1, maybe we can't even block it, or maybe she blind Azaleas and then just shoots a dominated arrow at us and we die. So I believe I do want to be a little more defensive, and I believe it may be that I want to block this E-Strike with the Oakenold here as well. I think using the Civic Steps is a fine decision, because if Azalea shoots this Bolton Shot, then we know that it's going to eat the go again and she doesn't benefit from us. If I'm blocking for 2 here, taking 3, and then putting a single card in front of the Bolton Shot, it tells me that I would want to just E-Strike bottoming the Oakenold. I don't think that makes sense. I think this line is supposed to be block 5, then put the Frostfang in front of the Bolton Shot, and just send Felling for 8. But I do like this block. Potentially we could have kept the Tunic and taken 1 point here, gone to 4, and just hoped that maybe we would get to Tunic again this game, but I don't think it's unreasonable to believe that I'm not going to get to Tunic this game. Blind Azalea finding a yellow Bolton Shot, so representing 3 damage instead of 2. I still think that blocking with the Frostfang here is the correct decision, as opposed to E-Striking. Now, the benefit of sending 13 and potentially forcing Azalea to give us armor is that it opens her to taking Frostbite damage later in the game. What we could do as well, which I like a lot less, is not blocking, going to 2, pitching Frostfang and Winter's Bite to the Felling so that we get to keep our Channel Lake Frigid around. With only 3 cards in hand, maybe Azalea just can't really do all that much on her turn. But sending 13 and getting armor out of Azalea says that she starts getting Frostbites when we get to play something like a Winter's Bite or another Frostfang. So this play is definitely risky because it puts us into kill range from dominated arrows. but it does mean that if Azalea wants to keep enough cards to start throwing those dominated arrows, that she is putting herself into a position where our hero actually does something. I'm a little disappointed that Azalea's tunic is on 2. If it was on 1, then I would feel much better about potentially getting 2 or even 3 cards out of her hand, because I would know that her options for her turn were very limited. But if she can keep the tunic and a 0-cost arrow, then she can potentially send a 1-card 7, which is very scary considering that we're on 2. Or she could tunic, load an arrow, draw a card, blind Azalea, find a 1-cost arrow, and then shoot it, and it has dominate, and we really just need Fruits of the Forest off the top of our deck to keep us alive through something like a Remorseless with dominate. We are going to send the Felling. We are going to decompose. Azalea just took 5 damage from the E-Strike. So we'll see how she wants to deal with this. We know that she needs to give us at least 2 cards, unless she has a Sink Below. And if she has the Sink Below, then she will have to pitch for it, which is really nice. That is the offensive bonus of Channel Lake Frigid that I was talking about. So Azalea going to 1, still giving us 1 card off of the, still giving us 2 cards by blocking with Sink Below. So nice for us, with Azalea having the E-Strike in hand. Potentially she would have just E-Striked for 7, or maybe she would have used the tunic to load an arrow and then draw a card. She does find the Remorseless with dominate. We are the best Flesh and Blood players in the world because we find our Fruits of the Forest. Discarding Fruits of the Forest is going to take us up to 4. We can block with Terra Sunder or Channel Mount Ison. That puts us down to 2. And then playing the Frostfang will put us to 1, but keep us alive. Playing Frostfang gives Azalea a Frostbite, and she needs to give us at least 2 cards to deal with the Frostfang, which technically has an on-hit, but at this point the on-hit is death. Unfortunately, we cannot play Channel Mount Ison and then kill Azalea without giving her the opportunity to clear the Frostbite. For one thing, we can't kill Azalea with that line anyway, right? Azalea's out to dying from Channel Mount Ison would be to play the 3rd Sink Below in her deck. And so if this Frostfang was a blue, we would at least have the option to play Channel Mount Ison and then pitch the blue to Titan's Fist. Azalea needs to find her Sink Below to stay alive, and if she can't clear the Frostbite, she just dies to Channel Mount Ison. The reason we can't do that now is that we need to pitch an ice card somehow to get Channel Mount Ison's flow cost paid, which we cannot do with a red Frostfang. So we'll block with the Channel Mount Ison. We'll keep the Terra Sunder. I don't think it particularly matters which one we keep, but Terra Sunder does give us the option to kill Azalea with a Titan's Fist for 4 later in this game, or if we can keep enough cards to Titan's Fist for 5 dominate. Whereas Channel Mount Ison really says we need 2 cards in hand to win with it. We need 1 of them to be an ice card to pay for the flow cost. I think the Terra Sunder is just a little bit better. So Azalea being able to block up the Frostfang. I should say that Fatigue is an option at this point in the game. We have fewer cards left in deck than Azalea does, but our Titan's Fist is attacking for 4 every turn. Azalea needs to block with 2 cards. So we've got an Endless Arrow coming for 4. The question that I have to ask is, does Azalea have Rain Razors? Because we could just block this with our Rootbound Carapace, and then we even have Oaken Old to block with if Azalea does something like a Snapdragon's Bullseye play. We also cover the Endless Arrow so that Azalea can't get it back. I mean, again, the on-hit is death. So the question is, are we blocking with Oaken Old Rootbound Carapace, or are we just blocking with Rootbound Carapace? And I think considering, I believe, that we have seen 1 Rain Razors, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that Azalea has more, and if you were a better player than I am, you would know what Azalea's deck looks like, or you would have been counting the Rain Razors in pitch. I don't think it's unreasonable to block for 7 here, considering that our follow-up is going to be Felling of the Crown for presumably lethal. Azalea needs to cover all 8 felling damage on 3 cards, and if she can't do anything, then that's pretty good. So Azalea snapping here tells us that she is looking at a bullseye play. We can block for 6, which is very likely going to be enough unless she goes for a blind Azalea and finds a 0-cost arrow. We are extremely lucky that this is just Bolt and Shot for 3, because we get to keep our Frozen to Death, which is going to let us Titan's Fist for 4. We do get punished by overblocking the Endless Arrow, because if we had been able to, if we just put Rootbound in front of it, block 4, and then put Oakenold in front of the Bolt and Shot, then we get to Felling of the Crown for 8, which obviously would have been much better. But the fact that Azalea is getting us 2 Codexes to stop the Titan's Fist is pretty good for us too. Choosing to keep the wow, she had 3 Codexes in the same hand. That's pretty wild. Choosing to keep the Tunic makes sense. And we've got a Infecting Shot coming in for 5. If this is Rain Razors, then we can use Rootbound Carapace to play around it. I think there was not an argument for blocking with like Crumble and Rootbound, because then we get to keep an extra card, but we can't use any of our extra blues. The Rootbound Carapace does get to just live in our arsenal now, which is really nice. And Titan's Fist is going to come in for 4. So this is actually the best 2-card hand that we could have in this situation. I mean, if the Rootbound was a Felling, that'd be pretty nice too, but Azalea just not quite being able to present the right combination of cards to kill us, which means that we get to just barely cling on in this game, and we are putting ourselves into a position where fatigue is very possible, and we have a lot of 2-card hands left in our deck that present more damage than Azalea can realistically deal with. We'll see what Azalea finds with the blind Azalea. Notably, she has Tunic up as well. Knock the Death Whistle is the worst card that Azalea could have found off the top of her deck, and I feel great about it. She's already done her hero power, and she has not loaded Death Dealer, so she puts a Bolt and Shot on top of the deck. We know that she's going to draw it, and even coming in with a Spire Sniping is not her best line. The Bolt and Shot is going to let her pay for it. Release the Tension here, kind of annoying, because we cannot play our Rootbound Carapace from Arsenal, which means that we just need to block with 2 of these 3 blocks, considering that Azalea does not have an Arsenal. The on-hit for CNC is death anyway. I am barely not going to remember that Release the Tension says we can't play Rootbound from Arsenal, so I think I'm going to pass blocks and then immediately undo. Oh, I should read this card, it has text. I would have liked to play the Rootbound from Arsenal so that I could E-Strike for 5 go again by bottoming CNC and then pitch Imposing Visage to the Titan's Fist to come in for 5, presenting 9 damage total, split over 2 really nice breakpoints. The 5 probably gets 2 cards from Azalea. The 4 probably gets a card and the Tunic, and then Azalea has nothing to do on her turn. This block is wrong. It should just be E-Strike for 7, which thankfully I'm going to see because Azalea has no Arsenal, and the on-hit is Death. Now the question is, does Azalea still have a Sink Below left in her deck? Because if she does, then the CNC comes in for 7 and for 6, and Azalea can't block with the Sink Below. But realistically, we're getting 2 cards out of her either way, and the E-Strike just says if she doesn't have Sink Below, then she has to give us 3 cards. and has nothing to do on her turn. And now we draw into an interesting hand where we have to ask the question, does Azalea have Sink Below? Because if she has Sink Below, then she can cover Titan's Fist for 5 with Tunic and Sink and keep 4 cards. Whereas if she doesn't have the Sink Below, she just dies. If she does have the Sink Below, she keeps 4 cards, and we're in some real trouble. So rather than sending the Tear Asunder, let's just Felling for 8. We will bottom the second. We'll pitch a So tomorrow, play Felling, bottom a So tomorrow, keep the Tear Asunder, which not only blocks 3, but does have the capability to kill Azalea on our next turn. The Felling says that she bottoms a card from hand. She has to give us at least 3 cards. Maybe that's Sink Below, a 3-block Arrow, and Tunic. Maybe it's Sink Below, a 3-block and a 2-block, or Sink Below and 2 2-blocks, but she has to give us 3 cards. And we still have this Rootbound Carapace in the arsenal that we can block for 4 with. So I like this play, I like this decision. Rather than just hoping Azalea doesn't have the Sink, let's throw the Felling and at least be somewhat disruptive, rather than throwing the Tear Asunder Hammer and potentially getting absolutely blown out. Yeah, we have not seen Sink number 3, and if Azalea blocks for 4, then yeah, we can reasonably expect she has the Sink. So going with the Felling there, keeping us alive, absolutely 100%. And now that we have seen all 3 Sink Belows and Azalea doesn't have Tunic, suddenly if we can block with Rootbound from hand, Rootbound from arsenal, we get to win by playing Tear Asunder, pitching Tear Asunder, attacking with Titan's Fist for 5 Dominate by blocking with Imposing Visage. So this we're just going to pass. We'll play Imposing Visage from hand. We do not need to decompose it. We can play from arsenal too, it doesn't matter. We don't need to decompose. We get to Tear Asunder, Titan's Fist, arsenal, another Rootbound Carapace, though at that point the game is over. So really close game, a lot closer than it should have been, considering definitely that I screwed up the Okanold by not playing it, but also just having some clunky turns, especially at the start of the game. Something I don't like about this list is that we only do have 3 D-React, and they are all Rootbound Carapace, so they don't necessarily even block for 4. Sink Below is a lot better in a lot of situations. Obviously, if we're trying to turn on Felling of the Crown and Plow Under, then Rootbound is really nice. But the list that I have put up on FaB and that I am selling to my patrons also has Staunch Response, which is really nice against Azalea, and in a lot of other matchups too. So it is a weakness of this deck. At the same time, we had a few turns where we got to throw a 2-card 8 that guaranteed takes a card from Azalea, and that really kept us in this game too. So a lot of good and a lot of bad to be said about this deck. I'll be playing with it over the next 2 weeks, just experimenting, seeing what I like and what I don't, and deciding what I can take and incorporate into my personal Jarl list. I hope you enjoyed this game. I hope you learned something. If so, be sure to pummel that like button. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback. I have a Discord, I have a Patreon, I have a Blue Sky. All of those links are in the video description below. You can also find the link to this deck list, and if you haven't already done so, please consider a YouTube subscription. Until the next time I see you on Daily FaB Gameplay, take care.